In this video, we'll be adding a section instead of this try our services that we copied from the first project. But before we do that, I'm going to quickly adjust this fluid jumbotron section here. So let's inspect it, and what I want to do is simply change it so that it's not really almost touching the navbar here. So first off, I'm going to edit a couple of margin utility classes. So first we can work on the container itself by simply adding empty-5, and that's going to move it a little bit here. And then on the H1 class, I can edit MB-4. So that way, we can maybe even add a bit more margin by adding a margin right here. So we're going to say MT4, and what that does is it shows us an example of collapsed margin. So if you've got a margin on the bottom and you've got a margin on the top, the two are going to collapse, so that's not going to work. So instead, let's just go PT-4, and now we get what we wanted. Similar to that, we can also add a padding here as well. So let's say PT-5, and it's going to move even more. And now we can say PT-5 or 4, and now I think this is all in all much better than what it was. So now let's go to the editor and open Jumbotron, and in here I'm going to say margin top 5, padding top 5, H1 padding top 5, and maybe even here padding top 5. Let's just see what's going to happen. So I go Control S, and back in here we can see it's regenerated. So now that I go refresh, okay, it looks centered, and that's much better. Alright, so that's it for the Jumbotron section, and now we are going to deal with this try our services section. So instead of this area right here, what I want to do is I'm going to use another component of Bootstrap, and that is the media object. So I'm going to type media, and I get two results, media object and media list. So let's first see the media list link, and here's the code right here. So I'm just going to copy it, and back in here, try our services. So let's find this try our services section, and I'll find it by going to index, and we're simply going to delete all of this. So instead of this section right here, all the way down to here, we're simply going to replace it with another include, and this time we're going to say include media list.html. We're going to save it, and right in here we're just going to add another include. So let's say new file, media-list.html, and now that it's open, I'm going to paste in the code that I copied from the official docs. And for the source, I'm just going to use http placehold.it 40 by 40, and I'll repeat the same thing right here. Control S to save. And now when I hit refresh, that's what we get. So that's exactly the code as it looks like on the official docs. What we want to do now is we want to actually adjust it for our page. So there's a couple of things that we can do. One interesting thing is to actually make this container narrow, and we can do this by this simple technique that's not really Bootstrap specific, but I think it's a useful thing to know and to be able to use. So we're going to start off by going to the index file. Right here, I'm going to say container, and then I'm going to add another class of container dash narrow. So now that I save, I'll go to main, and I'll just set container narrow here, dash narrow, and I'll say max width 500 pixels. Okay, so let's save everything, save all, and back in here it should have regenerated, so let's just go refresh and see what we get. We get an easily centered, so to say, a column basically, even though it's just a container. So that's a neat little trick. I think it's interesting to be aware of. And the only thing that I'm wondering about now is that maybe we should still make it just a tad more, tad wider. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's give it 580 pixels. Control S to save it. And since we're in the editor, let's also give it a heading. So I'm going to say H1 our messaging app. Okay, so now that we've actually got the product that we're going to showcase, and that's a messaging app, we can also just update the navbar by changing the brand here to our messaging app, and we'll point the anchor link, the anchor tag to the home of our project. So I'm going to go File, Save All, and down here when I refresh, we get this nice heading followed with a list-based media object. So let's add some padding margin to it. Back in here, I can go index, and right here I'm gonna say class equals mt-5. Simple as that, or actually MB, because we want to get the margin to appear on the bottom, not on the top. So I'm going to save everything and once again refresh, and that looks pretty good. So that's the starting point for our messaging app showcase. There are still a couple things to do, like specifying some text here, giving the actual user image, etc., etc. But we're going to do that in the next video.